Hello there. Welcome to my weekly meditation. I am Reverend Devon, and if you are looking to nurture a progressive faith and are open to a second opinion, please know that no matter who you are or where you are in your life journey, you are welcome in this place. And so please also feel free to like and subscribe and share these messages with anybody you feel called to. Our reading for today comes from 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verses 16 through 23. If I proclaim the gospel, this gives me no ground for boasting, for an obligation is laid on me, and woe to me if I do not proclaim the gospel. For if I do this of my own will, I have a reward, but if not of my own will, I am entrusted with a commission. What then is my reward? Just this, that in my proclamation I may make the gospel free of charge, so as not to make full use of my rights in the gospel. For though I am free with respect to all, I have made myself a slave to all, so that I might win more of them. To the Jews I became a Jew in order to win Jews. To those under the law I became as one under the law, though I myself am not under the law, so that I might win those under the law. To those outside the law I became as one outside the law, though I am not free from God's law, but am under Christ's law, so that I might win those outside the law. To the weak I became weak, so that I might win the weak. I became all things to all people, that I might by all means save some. I do it all for the sake of the gospel, so that I may share in its blessings. Hello, sisters and brothers. Welcome to another weekly meditation here at the Ascension Lutheran Church. And today we're talking about what it means to be a servant of God. And to help talk about that, this week we are examining a reading from 1 Corinthians chapter 9, where Paul talks about what it means for him to be a servant, sharing the good news of God. And we also have a reading from the Gospel of Mark chapter 1, where we see Jesus putting himself forward as a servant. And I think that these passages are important because we as Christians have a diverse understanding of what it means to be a servant of God. Some of us commit ourselves to a certain sets of rules. Some of us try to show up to church every day. Some of us just try to be good people. Others try to engage with the world and make it better. And so, what is it that Jesus saw as being a servant of God? And what is it that Jesus' earliest followers believed that entailed as well? This is what we're going to be talking about so that we can try to build a better understanding of what it means today for us to be servants of God within the world. So let me start off this discussion by doing a brief overview of the reading this week from the Gospel of Mark. In the reading from the first chapter, we see Jesus visit the home of Simon Peter, and Simon Peter's mother-in-law is ill, and Jesus heals her. Being a small town, news of this gets around really quickly, and people from all over town start coming to Peter's house, and they're asking Jesus to heal them, to bless them. And Jesus spends the day helping everybody who comes to him by blessing them, by casting out unclean spirits, by healing them. And he does this for everybody, even those who disagree with him about being the Messiah. But Jesus sees it as his duty as a servant of God, the Son of God, to serve everybody that comes to him asking for help. After this, Jesus finds a place where he can rest. Peter comes and finds him and kind of is like, "How you doing?" And Jesus responds, "Ready to get back to work. Let's go to other towns and villages in the area and let people know about the love of God." I think that this is a good example of what evangelism as a Christian concept is supposed to look like. And I use the term evangelism because one of the things that I feel the reading from First Corinthians talks about is how our perception of God changes and is different among different people. And it's not their job to fit our mold as followers of Jesus Christ or followers of God's love, but rather it is the job of us who are sharing the good news to find ways to communicate to others in a way that they can understand and speak to them about God's love and how God's love is for all people. It's These are interesting passages because they push against this idea of the exclusivity of Christianity. Rather, they speak to a need for us to open up our own minds and open up our own hearts so that we can include any and everybody who wants to pursue a relationship with God in this world. And that is the reason why I refer to the term evangelism, because I feel that over time, as Christianity evolved and as society evolved alongside with it, that term has changed. Our understanding of evangelism has changed, not to a term that implies going out and helping people build up their own understanding of God's love and engage with that love, but rather as going out and forcing people to conform to a very rigid and dogmatic understanding of God's love. And that is not what Jesus was about. And from what we see in this passage from First Corinthians, that's not what Paul was about either. Paul definitely had his own ideas of what a good Christian should look like, but he was willing to change in order to make sure that people were able to engage with the idea of God and a deity that loves all people, and to try to find a way to work that into their own lives. He said that I became a Jew to minister to Jews. I stepped outside the law to minister to those outside the laws. I became a person of the law to minister to those within the law. I became weak to minister to those who are weak. Paul also became powerful to minister to those who were powerful. He had a lot of supporters in the upper echelons of Roman society, and very often was at their table as well. He became all things, quite literally, as he said, to be able to speak to all people. And that I feel is something that Christianity has really lost as it became more powerful over time and more entrenched in society. We lost this evangelical spirit of going out and sharing the good news and expected people to come to us and conform to us. That's not what Jesus was doing. That's not what Paul was doing. And I think that church in general is suffering because we no longer are trying to open up that good news to all people. Now, when I say things like that, I know Christians on both sides of the fence look to one another and they're like, wow, you're really messing up. I really wish you weren't doing that anymore and being more evangelical. But honestly, I think that whether you are a conservative Christian or a liberal Christian, the evangelical spirit that we see in these passages is not something that people are living by anymore. We see that the conservative evangelical tradition has been very good at going out into the world and engaging with people, but not necessarily in giving them autonomy, giving them agency, giving them the freedom to explore God in a way that fits them. On the flip side, we'll see within the progressive church, people are all for letting you think about God in a way that fits you. But there's not a lot of going out into the world and letting people know that they can do that. And so I do feel that contributes to the type of religious narrative Christianity has going on right now, where you have conservative evangelicals who are very fundamentalist, dominating the narrative. And every now and then, somebody from the progressive church might speak up and say something, but very quickly gets drowned out. I think that because the fundamentalist conservative evangelical church is such a loud voice in society right now, you find people getting hardened against that voice as well. People don't see the nuance in Christianity anymore. They're not able to find ways in which they can engage with Christianity in a way that helps them understand God and build up a relationship that helps them be good people within the world. That's not to say that we're not finding other ways to be good people within the world, but I do think that because we have lost the commitment to empower people to engage with God on their terms as evangelicalism was originally practiced. More and more, we are seeing people feel like they have been cut off from the tradition, the successes, the failures, the learning of the church, which for thousands of years has been troubleshooting how being in relationship with God works in the world we are living in. Nowadays, I see and speak to a lot of people who pick up the Bible and try to read it and they try to understand it. And often they say, it makes no sense. These stories make no sense. Why would a bush burst into flame and speak to Moses? How does that relate to the way in which the Hebrew people went into the land of Canaan and killed everybody? How does that relate to Jesus coming along and saying, "Nope, it's all about love now"? Isn't this supposed to be a linear story? And I think that is totally reasonable that they don't understand because there's a lot more to Christianity as a faith than just the Bible. There's the reason, experience, traditions, as well as scripture like the Bible that helps to inform us in being good people in the world today. The church is meant to be a tool that helps share the good news. And this is what Paul's talking about when he says, by committing ourselves to God, we become servants of God and to that good news. I think that a lot of people have been choosing not to commit themselves to that good news. They've been choosing to commit themselves to what feels comfortable to them, and that is within the progressive and conservative church alike. We are committed as Christians, Paul tells us, to go out into the world and to change the message of Christ into something that translates to people in the world. If you're in Greece, learn to speak Greek. If you're in Rome, learn to speak Latin or Italian now. If we are committed to sharing the love of God, then we should be willing to let people build up that love in a way that is meaningful in their own lives. If we start telling them that you have to obey the Bible exactly as it is written, but only these parts that I agree with, then that's not what Jesus was doing. That's not what Paul was doing. And I think that a lot of people can see that the spirit of Christianity now is not reflective of where it started out. For a church like Ascension, I think we are in a situation where we need to ask ourselves, how do we engage with that spirit of sharing that Jesus embodied through his ministry and passed on to others like Paul? And how do we change ourselves to better share that message of love with our community? We're in a time in church where if we are unwilling to change, we run the risk of breaking a commitment that we made with God as Christians to share the good news, to keep that light of Christ's love alive, because we were unwilling to give up our pews for more comfortable chairs, or because we were unwilling to stop singing from our hymnals and start singing songs that people are more familiar with, or because we require baptism in order to become members of the church. And I know that that's going to be a huge controversy for me to say here, but we need to take down those walls that keep people from engaging with God. And that quite literally is what Paul says here in this passage from 1 Corinthians 9. The reward that I have being a Christian, in becoming a servant of God, and giving up everything that I have for God, is that I can make the love of God free of charge for all people. Something to think on. Amen.